Proudly brought to you by Barfoot and Thompson.
Welcome along to another week of Property Matters, and if it sounds a little different this week, we've pre-recorded as we have a company-wide meeting taking place today, so I needed to be somewhere else. So I brought in two fabulous people, Matt and Adam from All Clear, who are going to chat to us this afternoon all about what's happening in the healthy home space and the meth space. Plus, I want to find out more about them as people, their leadership, and their company's journey. So welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Great to have you back. And Matt, you kick it off. I'm really curious. Tell us about your career journey and what led up to sort of getting involved, A, with this guy and B, All Clear.
Right. Yes, this guy. Adam and myself have now been working together for, near 15 years.
Yeah, 15 to 20 years.
Yeah, which is quite concerning. We met at our last employment. So we worked for a large multinational called Brightstar, which ran supply chain for Spark in New Zealand here. So Adam's background is technology, mine, chartered accountant. And so sales and finance. And that works quite well in our business now. All Clear's been around for about 10 coming
years.
up 10 years now.
Great. And so that's how you met?
We met in our previous roles, yeah.
Yep. And then left at the same time to form this business in 2016.
Brilliant. So, Adam, is there anything of your career highlights that have been missed there?
Probably not. Obviously, the similarities here is, technology was such a huge part of my career. Basically, it was the entirety of my career. And we've made no difference. It's made no difference here. In our business, technology is such a critical part of our business. And I guess it helps when you understand how big businesses do it, so you can then apply a lot of those learnings in the way that we do our tech.
Yeah, and try not to replicate some of the mistakes we've learned in large multinational organizations, and try not to be our bosses.
Love it. So, obviously, you are behind All Clear, but what is All Clear for anyone that hasn't heard of you before?
That's a great question. So, we started the business because we genuinely felt there was a real opportunity to do things better. And I think if you look almost universally, when businesses innovate, when they provide a better service than perhaps their competitors are, if they can be faster to market, if they can use technology perhaps better than some of their competitors, clients tend to respond better to that. And what we were able to do is basically do a better job than a lot of our competitors. And we obviously very much specialise in supporting the property management industry. So that's one of the reasons why we've been successful, in my view. It's we do it better. Our reports are better, our technology is better, our response times are better, our people are better, and that, we've seen people respond with, support.
But in short, we're environmental consultants, but also technical risk management solutions. I think that was what, those are the sorts of words that Adam came up with. What does it actually mean, Adam?
Well, basically it means if there's a risk component, we'll figure out a way to ensure that you are not creating undue risk and you're discharging your obligations and responsibilities. That's kind of how it works.
So a lot of what we do, Stephen, is around property compliance space. So certain things like smoke alarms and healthy homes are a legal requirement for a tenancy agreement. So we provide services in that space around a legislative requirement. Same with likes of asbestos. We're qualified surveyors. And then we've got less utilised services that are there when customers need them. Mould consulting, water testing, things like that.
Right. We'll unpack a little bit more about what you do a little later in the show. I mean, 10 years next year in the, as an organisation, you've been through the whole COVID journey as well. Are you national or are you just local to Auckland? Where are you operating?
Almost completely national now, and it's taken a long time to get there. All of our staff are full-time employees. We don't do the contractor model, which has meant that we've been able to control the quality of the experience in every market that we operate in, which I think is also probably key to our successes too. But certainly almost national. Almost national.
Interesting you say you don't do the contract model. I guess, from a customer service point of view, your staff have to be everything to do with your brand. We all live and die as a business by our staff and our people. What made you make that shift to go, okay, I'm not going to contract people across the country?
Well, we looked at, when we set the business up in our infancy, we looked at all of these options. We took extensive advice. We looked at competitors' models. We looked at, we took client feedback on board. And the one thing we kept on coming back to is, controlling quality. And that comes down to people and systems, basically. So I think that there's no real alternative. If you want that consistent service right across the country with no exceptions, the only way really to do that is a national business with a national presence.
All our company cars and logos and things have, proudly Kiwi owned and operated. Our customer services are all run in New Zealand out of Christchurch. So we go along to a lot of property management conferences, and there's a lot of offshoring experts there. We don't do any of that. It's all in New Zealand.
Yeah. True
to maximise that customer experience.
Nice. So you've been in this industry for a while. What are some of the biggest changes that you have seen since you started operating? And I guess I'm curious too, as our governments have changed, have you seen those key moments sort of every 3 or 4 years?
We've both got a few more grey hairs, Stephen. Sorry, legislative.
There's lots of examples of we were actually talking about it yesterday in preparation for this podcast. And we were really sort of saying that I think most people underestimate how businesses are affected by political change.
I would have never believed that if you told me 10 years ago the influence of political winds blow and it changes and impacts businesses.
And I think that sometimes that you have to be quite careful not to get too cynical when you look at some of the regulatory changes, and then you look at it through the lens of a particular political angle. You have to really push yourself not to get too cynical about it. But there's been a number of huge changes, not least of which, obviously, 2018 Gluckman report. That was a huge change for industry. I mean, the good news there for us is that we had many other services. So it was part of our portfolio. And I think that we were very well set up to manage that change in direction because A, we'd already been really pragmatic about the issue in the first place. B, we were staffed with really good scientific experts. And C, we kind of understood that, there were many people in the industry that were overstating issues, complicating things, and driving their own, personal agenda rather than trying to do what's right for the client. And that's just not what we're about. So I think we were quite well placed to manage that.
Yeah, we listed some of those 2016 smoke alarm legislation, 2018 Gluckman report, 2019 Healthy Homes. Now we've got pets.
Yeah, so that's something that's we've just
the next one in the mix.
1st of December now, it seems to be announced. So here's the thing, right? I get from a societal perspective, we understand when we fully support the need for rental property to become longer term in nature. We get that, but at the same time, not all pets are good pets. And not all occupants have responsible tendencies. So I think certainly from a service provider's perspective, pets will introduce the propensity for more pets, I should say, does introduce new layers of complexities for service providers. So we've got really good systems around dogs. We train all our staff around dog management, and luckily we've never had any major issues.
We mark properties that we know dogs are present in.
So there are going to be some changes for service providers at our size and our scale around managing the higher likelihood of encountering animals on site, because unfortunately there is a very small percentage of them who just aren't particularly friendly.
Absolutely. Look, you started touching on healthy homes, and it's been such a big topic over the last few years, but especially this year as everyone worked towards the deadline to complete it. Firstly, for brand new investors listening into this show, can you just give us a synopsis? What is Healthy Homes in a nutshell? And if they are looking to purchase a property, what advice would you give them to think about if this is going to be an investment property?
Great question. So, the first question I'd be asking if I was an investor is, I'd be looking at the compliance status of that property. And obviously that's going to be a different conversation depending on whether it's a more modern, recently constructed property versus something that might be 30 years old, for example. I still think that the majority of housing stock in the rental space is older. Obviously, we're seeing that percentage change slowly over time, but I think the older the property, the conversation is slightly different. Certainly, if I was an investor looking to add properties into my portfolio, I would be very closely looking at that compliance achievement that property has. I'd be looking to ensure that whoever did an assessment on it is competent, that they have the report is of a very professional, high standard. And I would be thoroughly understanding all of the information in that report when I'm considering adding that into my portfolio. That would be the first thing I would be considering.
If we go back a step, Healthy Homes, what is it? Is a legal requirement now after 1 July this year, 2025.
Yeah.
You need to be attesting that the property meets all the elements of Healthy Homes.
And what are those elements?
So there's 5 elements: heating, ventilation, draft stopping, moisture ingress, and drainage. And they comprise, really from a compliance standpoint, they are some of the most important aspects of homes in terms of their compliance view. The good news is that the majority of properties that we see that have been well managed, well maintained, are largely compliant. That is the good news. We certainly see some gaps with properties that haven't perhaps been well managed and well maintained over the years, and that's sometimes the reasons for that do vary. We do see a gap sometimes between professionally managed properties and owner-occupied properties that may have been not well maintained. But they're, for the most part, a lot of the issues, if there are any, can be resolved relatively cheaply, which is good news.
Okay.
And I think that, regardless of what the political views, the listeners may have, warmer, dry, healthy homes are a good outcome for society. I think they drive the right kind of changes in our economy. Obviously, we want a productive workforce. We want happy, healthy kids. We want people feeling happy being in their home. So that's a good thing. Arguably there was some challenging timelines, particularly when you threw COVID in the mix. But I think that regardless of any political thing, I genuinely think the science behind healthy homes is actually pretty good.
And properties ebb and flow out of the management pool nationally of managed properties. So, these properties end up being owner-occupied in time as well, which can only but benefit greater society.
Absolutely. How have you seen as a nation, have we done in the property management space or private landlords? You're one of the biggest providers. Are you seeing that actually we've nailed this really well? Or is it different in different parts of the country, dare I ask?
There's not a huge gap nationally between the big centres in terms of average total compliance. I'd suggest last time we pulled the data, it was sitting around late 80s, early 90s. The issue that we have sometimes is some clients don't tell us when they've made the remedial changes. So we can't actually report on when that property becomes compliant. So that does
pose. We provide free report updates, and like a VTNZ station, we just do assessments. So we don't quote for any remedial work on any of the Healthy Homes elements, and we rely on both private landlords or property managers updating us with, here's the information for the work we've had done. Give us a free report update.
Right.
Yeah. So sometimes they don't.
So where the data sometimes doesn't reflect that remedial update as if they've had the work done but haven't told us.
Yeah.
But I would suggest the national average is around about 90%. I'd suggest the majority of our professional clients have done a pretty good job. I'd suggest that the issues probably more sit on the DIY owner side of the fence.
And your company goes in and will work with a private landlord. It doesn't have to be a property manager.
It's not our core business.
Yeah. But you are.
Because there's an education element there, Stephen, which we just don't need to educate property managers on the benefits of healthy homes. Property managers tend to not be as emotionally attached to the property, so don't take it as a personal slight when we fail an element.
Yeah,
that's the challenge we're sharing sometimes for the accidental private landlord.
Are you finding that new builds are meeting the code of healthy homes, or is there still a little bit like, I've heard of a few reports of landlords saying, but hang on, I only brought this in the last 12 months. It's a brand new build. What do you mean it's not up to code?
Yeah, so there's still some obvious gaps there. The building code still doesn't require a moisture barrier, which obviously, as you know, is a requirement under the Healthy Homes regulations. And there is an argument there that people sort of say, I don't see the benefit of a moisture barrier. That may be true for many properties, but the reality is it's a relatively inexpensive addition to a property. I do think they have a very valid point when they say it's not part of the building code. It's just been built. It was built for investment, and now
it spends all this money.
Yeah, I specifically built this property and acquired this property for rental. It's built to code. It's got COC, but now it's in the RTA world. It needs a building. It needs a moisture barrier. I get that. I understand that completely. And our only message there is hopefully the team in Wellington at the relevant ministry can figure that out. But the good news is most of the changes that are required in these properties are relatively inexpensive. The most expensive thing typically is a heating appliance. And from our data, the average heating requirement is about 5.7 kilowatts, and you're looking sort of $3,000 to $3,500.
Right. And I say for modern builds, that's a standard. That's an expectation. You don't buy a modern townhouse and not see a heat pump. So you're already taking those main.
And I guess if
boxes.
you're getting a new build done, being really clear with that development company that I am going to use this as an investment, so I want it up to Healthy Home standard from the start.
Always great discussion with the salesperson. Plans.
Yeah, there's. If I could probably say there were three relatively common issues with newer builds. One would be the moisture barrier. Two would be an undersized or incorrectly located heat pump. And the third thing is usually relating to very minor issues around draft stopping.
Okay.
But all relatively easy to fix.
Yeah. So that your team come and they do an assessment, obviously work then has to be done to fix it, and then you come back and recheck, or do you often just look at the proof and evidence that say the heat pump's been installed?
The latter usually. It's usually done remotely with evidence in the form of photographic evidence. It could be a letter from a professional providing an exemption, a body corp, for example. It could be an invoice from a supplier saying, "Hey, look, we've installed the thing that needed to be installed." If there are concerns around the remedial work, we often do go back. It's not super common, but we do go back when necessary. Yep.
You just mentioned exemption. So what sort of things form an exemption?
Right, so there's most of the categories have general exemptions. There's also overarching exemptions in the legislation, which primarily relate to body corporate partial ownership scenarios. So that is incredibly common in Auckland. So we're talking about apartment buildings, we're talking about developments, townhouses, things like that, where there's communal areas and they're managed as part of a body corporate. So they are incredibly common. And the body corporate exemption actually applies to all 5 categories. So if the body corp says no to something, it doesn't happen.
Right.
Of course, the challenge there is that if work gets done, so say for example, the body corp said, "Hey, look, we don't want you to penetrate the roof, or we don't want you to penetrate the exterior of the building," and then in 2 years' time, the body corp undertake exterior maintenance and they have to penetrate the exterior of the building, that exemption ceases.
Okay.
So just something to be aware of.
Common one for that is re-roofing a property as well, right?
Yeah, that's a very good
sunk ceiling, no insulation, then they go and re-roof it.
You don't need
to install the insulation.
Yeah.
So that's actually, I've seen that a handful of times just in the last few months where they haven't been able to upgrade the insulation, justifiably, because it hasn't been accessible. And then, of course, roofs don't last forever. New roof goes on, and the roofing contractor in many cases forgets to tell them to do the insulation at the time, and then the exemption ceases to apply. The last thing you want to be doing is putting a new roof on and then taking it off again to put insulation under. So we see that fairly common. So exemptions, I guess our key message there is they're not permanent in nature and require ongoing focus and attention. So whatever work is planned at that building, and whether it's part of a wider development, that has to be looked at closely around ongoing exemptions.
Okay. All right. Let's move away from healthy homes to another exciting topic, meth contamination. Obviously, there's been latest updates to regulations. Can you give us a little bit of a layman's term update on where are we sitting in this meth space?
Right. So let's start at the beginning. So obviously meth use continues to grow. We've seen a significant increase in meth use post-COVID. A lot of things happened as a result of COVID. COVID affected society in a number of negative ways, and I think drug and alcohol use was certainly one of them. So meth is still a very big part of New Zealand society. Just recently, HUD released their draft regulations, And they've indicated that those regulations will come into effect in mid-2026. Obviously, we're super conscious that 2026 is an election year. So with that in mind, we're of the view that it's probably going to be March, April, May type timing. That's what we're of the view of. Obviously, we don't know for sure. They're now proposing to set, and that was really the missing piece of the puzzle. In 2019, the RTA was amended to specify contaminants, but it didn't specify at what level the property was considered contaminated, which is obviously challenging, right? It says contamination, but it doesn't say at what level. So we've kind of been operating in this huge state of transition, and it's been very hit and miss with the tribunal. And we understand clients' frustrations, and we understand people who are dealing with these issues' frustrations. So moving forward, there's effectively 2 levels now. It's greater than 15 requires decontamination, and greater than 30 not only requires decontamination, but also gives parties the ability to exit the agreement, in the case of the tenant, 2 days notice, in the case of the owner, 7 days notice. So that's at levels 30 and above.
Right.
So those are the proposed changes. That's obviously a significant increase from what the current standard, which was developed in 2017, says. That specifies 1.5 and 3.8 for limited use areas. So significantly higher. And it shouldn't go unmentioned that none of the other countries that we look at from a regulatory perspective have increased theirs.
Wow.
Now, here's the thing: we're not here to sit here and explain why we should be setting levels, because quite frankly, that's not our job. That's the job of toxicologists and regulators and advisors. That is their job. But it is very high by international standards.
Is that the concern, that because we've got such a problem out there, that if it was too low, we'd have far too many properties contaminated?
I'd say it's an inconvenient truth. Yeah. I would suggest it's part of it. I mean, I do think that we could have gone higher. And I think that no matter what level they chose, there was going to be some criticism. I get that. But 15 is incredibly high.
When you're testing a property, do you often find, it's the whole property, or is there just certain parts of the house? And I guess, I think of the flatmate situation as, the bedroom or the garage or whatever, but potentially not the whole house because others in the house didn't like it?
So that's a good question. Turns out meth users aren't particularly well disciplined. We have seen that. But it is pretty rare. So we've seen scenarios where, and I guess it comes down to all. Yeah, we've seen. Yeah, we have seen it all. We've seen scenarios where it's just in the bedroom and it's just in the master ensuite.
Right,
that's it. Right. And I think that probably is largely to do with the behaviour that's been occurring in that property and probably the makeup of that household.
Who's in the house,
and how long they were there for, and all those sort of factors. But generally speaking, there are concentration points in properties. laundries, garages, bathrooms, master bedrooms, all of that sort of thing. But generally in most cases, most of the house needs to be decontaminated if it's at a level where decontamination is required.
I remember being a property manager and having a lovely tenant who was in her early 80s in a small house, and she was moving between tenancies, and our landlord had required a between tenancy check, and it came back with a very high reading just in one room, and she of course denied it and was absolutely horrified until suddenly the penny dropped.
Family member.
That once a month for a week, her granddaughter came to stay to be close to uni in Auckland, and it was only in the guest bedroom. So yeah, awkward conversation there. But that between tenancy was something, when I was a property manager, we really pushed so that you've got that benchmark if there is a problem later down the track. Is that something you still recommend, that when a tenancy shifts, we should be rechecking?
That's a difficult. So on a case by case basis, what we would always say to clients is that, number one, we don't advocate for wholesale and mandatory or wholesale meth testing, because quite frankly, it's not justified in all of those cases. But what we do say is, look at the risk profile, and that's made up of a whole lot of different ingredients. It's made up of your insurance particulars. It's made up from the location of the property, whether it's professionally managed or not. The type of tenants that are going in there, the history of the property. Look at all that and then make a call. I do think moving into this new environment with these new regulations, there are going to be significant benefits for those who probably look at testing, because one of the challenges that we've already picked up is, okay, cool. So the new active duty to act threshold, let's call it that, of greater than 15. What happens if there were 3 or 4 tenancies that gets it to above 15?
Right, exactly.
Where does accountability fit in all of that? Because one of the things that's very clear in the regulations is the duty to decontaminate, but it doesn't sort of specify who's responsible for the cost. And if you look at the exemplary damages piece in the RTA, the maximum the tenant's going to be liable for looks like it's $1,800.
Right.
So I think ultimately the landlord's going to end up paying, and then hopefully the landlord ends up being able to claim costs from their insurer.
Yeah, nice reminder for landlords to be checking out their insurance policies. And not every insurance policy is the same. So asking that question as a landlord, what cover do I have if there is a meth contamination?
And we'll probably continue to see changes in that space from the insurers. It's early days, right?
Yeah, I mean, typically policies are renewed on an annual basis, so we expect to see some pretty big changes occurring in 2026, 2027 as policies start to renew. And I think certainly from our time, we've been doing this a long time now. People tend to underestimate the importance that insurers play in topics like this.
Yeah.
So I get that the tenancy tribunal and enforcement is important in the civil considerations. That's all great. But if it came down to it, is getting $20 a week from the tenant more important than getting a payout from if it's a serious issue that does require significant work to fix? What's more important, accountability and $20 a week from the tenant, or a $20,000 payout from your insurance company? I know which option I would choose every time.
Yeah.
And I think that the insurance companies have got really good systems largely for managing this stuff. And I think that they have largely been pretty good since Gluckman.
Yeah, because through these changes, at least there's going to be one rule now, right? 15 and above.
Yeah.
None of this 1.5 versus 15. It's 15 and above.
Yeah.
And you want to know,
Yeah.
who caused it, and you want to know that you've got insurance behind you.
Yes.
All right, Matt, tell us, when you're not doing healthy homes and meth contamination, what else does All Clear get up to?
Oh, I thought that was going to be a personal question. And I say golf. And
Just not enough.
It's all consuming, being a small to medium business owner. We do a number of other services, as I mentioned, primarily supporting the property management industry. So they're a bit more ad hoc in nature, and we're there to help when needed. So be that private landlords or property managers. Primarily those are our customers rather than working for tenants. We do a lot of mold and moisture assessments in the wetter months of the year. That's quite a busy service. So that involves the team visiting site and undertaking an assessment and looking primarily for building failure. Maybe the property has got a leak or an issue, or we're looking at the way in which people are living. So lifestyle factors. They're sort of the two major causes of mold and moisture issues we identify. Other services include water testing, primarily for sort of like rural properties, and in some instances, water is provided as part of the tenancy. Right. So there is an obligation to ensure it's up to scratch. What
and asbestos, you cover stuff in there as well?
Was another category for us, and it's certainly very prevalent in the older rental housing stock. And, as I think we're seeing a lot more people do renovations on rental properties in the hope to, make them more.
Yeah, and that duty of care, the moment you're going to rip anything out, is checking if there's asbestos sitting there.
That's the toll gate where you sort of have a duty to act.
Probably neglected one of our larger services there. We're a large player in the smoke alarm space, so obviously that is a requirement to check that you've got the correct type of smoke alarms, and then that they're working the way in which they're designed to work prior to the commencement of a tenancy. And then legislation says to ensure, essentially that they are working throughout the tenancy. So we offer what we call a subscription service, where we cover the property, including smoke alarms, for an annual fee, and we visit yearly at a minimum, but we also visit between tenancy and cover any repairs, replacements, things like that. So it's a full end-to-end, so that's a national service. We've developed more recently complementary services to that. where we're
Safety.
doing fire safety. So blankets and extinguishers, carbon monoxide alarms, thermal alarms, things like that. So always want to be innovators, not sort of followers in the space.
Great. And, you mentioned innovation, Adam, you mentioned technology and how much that's changed over the years. How big a part does technology play in your business?
Oh, look, it's so that we sort of say when we interview staff, we say our business has two assets, our clients and our people. Arguably, I think we probably need to change that to 3. The technology being the third bit, because technology empowers the people, right? For a business of our size, our technology spend and strategy is probably equal to a business about 10 times our size. We have our own in-house developer. We have our own complete IT stack that we've built from scratch, which enables us to pretty much do whatever we can, whatever we choose to do from a service innovation perspective, which is very uncommon. Most businesses our size tend to buy products off the shelf, like buy software off the shelf, and just we're able to customize it however they want, or with limitations. Whereas we can literally do whatever we want with our tech, which really enables growth, innovation, and excellence, in my view. So it's a huge part of our business.
Brilliant. Now, in the leadership space, what have been some of your biggest challenges that you faced and how have you overcome them? And I guess doing it together instantly helps.
Yes. We were talking about this earlier, actually. We were trying to remember being a business owner, it's like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
It is a roller coaster every day, which is good and bad. It helps you. It's a challenge. And it toughens you up. It's character building. But I think out of all of the things that we've dealt with in our almost 10 years in business, the COVID-19 pandemic would have been the most difficult, because we went into that with, probably 40-something staff, 45 staff, quite a diverse geographic footprint, lots of challenges. And we went into it going, right, because obviously we were able to foresee that this wasn't going to last forever. And we had a really good, viable business. So we went into it with really 2 key objectives, and that was keep our people and make sure that we are in a position to restart the business when restrictions start easing.
And was it helpful being national because so much of the restriction was here in Auckland?
Yeah, I mean,
it allowed some of your business to keep going.
Yeah, the Canterbury team for a long time were kind of carrying the rest of the country to a certain extent. It came with challenges. I mean, moving people across borders and things like that were a challenge, but it also had some of its distinct advantages. That was the most difficult thing that we've worked on, and it was really, there were sleepless nights, right?
Yeah, and it created opportunity as well, right? So we popped up as one of the largest COVID testers in the country.
Right.
And we were doing PCR samples and rushing those to a laboratory for overnight analysis, and then we were doing rat instant testing for people to fly.
Yeah.
Using our reporting engine to develop certificates and make sure it was cost effective, using our mobile field force to travel to people who couldn't come to a location or a pharmacy.
Yep.
So we had a mobile service, but we also operated just outside the airport.
Wow.
And that kept business going.
So we were able to redeploy staff and it was a scientific-esque service. So we're able to redeploy our staff. We were able to generate revenue in a really the world had been turned upside down. That was, out of all of the things I'm proud of, I'm pretty proud of how we were able to execute.
Yeah, and kept all the Kaingaora building sites going. We tested for KO as well.
Did a lot of work in film and television. As mentioned, we did a joint venture with an airport parking provider. So we had a premise within the airport precinct, and we were basically about to sign an agreement with Christchurch Airport when most of the restrictions got lifted. So we were in a very good place, and we're able to utilise our staff and keep those objectives, keep our people, make sure that when restrictions started to ease, we're able to get back into it.
So how have you two defined your roles? You've worked together for so long. How do you define who does what?
Obviously, Matt being the chief financial officer, he takes care of most of the financial stuff, given his significant experience in that space. But I think largely because we're so similar in the way that we make decisions, if I'm not around or he's not around, or he's in a meeting and I'm not, we both are our decision-making is so similar. we were talking about it in the car on the way in. He speaks for me and I speak for him most of the time, which is kind of rare.
Good.
It's unfortunate if you're trying a divide and conquer strategy, Stephen, like some of the staff try to do from time to time, because it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
If it doesn't pass the sniff test of I wouldn't agree to that, then I sure know he would.
Yeah, that's nice.
So we agree on 99.999% of things, which is good because
you got to get into business with somebody you like, somebody you trust. These are, that's my advice to people.
Probably.
Don't
get into business with somebody you don't like or don't want to spend the day with.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that, I think that humans universally crave consistency.
Yeah.
So we're super consistent.
Nice. Now, one thing that I do need to raise that may make our listeners jealous is you have enormous lolly jars that you give out to property management companies. Why did you choose this as your point of difference?
That's a great question. So lolly jars have been done by trade suppliers in this industry before. And, reflecting on my earlier comments, we like to do things better. We look at competitors' offerings, we look at past history, and we kind of go, how can we do that better? How can we do that so it's actually more memorable? How can we have it being a really positive experience for our brand? So if you think about the lolly jars, it's a significant program that we run. It's in the tens of thousands of dollars a year. It's a significant program, but it has a water cooler type effect in the branches where it operates, where it brings people together. It's a social experience. Like, I get that lollies aren't the healthiest thing. You don't want to eat too many of them, but at the same time, they're pretty damn tasty. It's got the electronic reordering thing. We're constantly upgrading and updating the range. We just get nothing but positive feedback about it. We
keep it fresh. We do a high turnover, so the lollies are always fresh.
That's a good point of difference.
Positive.
Yeah. And I think that, our clients, we've become synonymous now for kind of pretty cool gifting. And at the top of that pyramid is the lolly program.
We're always working, the listeners may not realize, but property managers love gifts and shiny things. Mm-hmm. So we're always working on what's next. There's always something coming from overseas.
It's got to be value add.
Yeah.
It's got to be something that adds value in their life. Right, it's useful.
Self-phone charges.
Yeah, something new coming for 2026, which we're just in the process, so we can't say too much about that. But that's one of those. It's a great marketing program, the lolly program. And it does exactly what we want it to do, which is have them having a memorable experience when they're thinking about us as a brand. It creates a bit of a social experience with them, and which is kind of important after COVID, where we're almost trying to keep 2 meters away from everyone.
Certainly not putting your hands in a lolly jar, but you do provide tongs.
That's where the tongs. And we're told that they are strictly enforced in some branches. It's good.
How can people get in touch with you, find out more, find out about your services, everything?
So the best way is obviously via our website. So it's allclear.nz. On the website, there is information on every single one of our services. We have obviously a chat function where you can chat with our team during business hours. We're actually a Monday to Saturday operation now from a customer services perspective. So more or less 8 till 6. But the website is a great destination for information on all of our services. And we offer training on all of our services too for the industry, which is actually really well received.
Brilliant.
So particularly on those complex services like things like asbestos, water quality, where, sometimes it makes property managers' head spin.
Absolutely. All right, jump on the website, find out more. Thank you, Matt and Adam, for coming in. We've run out of time, but let's catch up again in 2026 and see what your new gift is and what your new product is. Thanks so much for tuning in today. If you've got any questions for any of our guests or would like someone on, email us at propertymatters@barfoot.co.nz. Thank you, Barfoot and Thompson, for sponsoring us today, and to Michelle and Paul at Planet FM for putting all this together at short notice for us. Have a great week. We will catch you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.